So when there's a team that goes from 109 wins and then goes to 84 wins and still has the highest payroll in the MLB and the 30th worst farm system in the MLB, it's got to be a little bit of an issue, don't you think? Let's talk about that.
Hold up, wait until the whole team show up, yeah. I'm in Neverland, can't grow up, yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about the Boston Red Sox and what just happened in this last year and what they should do in this next offseason to help them be a better team in 2020. Their biggest issue was they just couldn't perform. They were having a lot of overpriced players that were underperforming, and that started with the starting pitching. They just weren't able to pitch whatsoever last year. And this is one of the biggest reasons why they only got 84 wins last year. And it really seemed like every time they had a good game pitching, the offense wasn't able to be there. Every single time they had a good offensive game, then the pitching just blew up. Or both sides just weren't able to figure things out, and then they just ended up losing the game. And so that's why throughout last season you saw there was a lot of times where they were flirting with the 500 record, and then they would get over it one or two games and they would get under it a few games. Then you never really knew if they were going to make the playoffs or not. And this showed because they had the 19th best ERA in the MLB with 4.70. And this doesn't help when you're spending $79 million on your top three starting pitchers. That's $32 million for David Price. That's $30 million for Chris Sale with his new extension that Dave Dombrowski decided to give to him. And then Nathan Eovaldi is making $17 million. And last year, in an average of 23 games, each of them had a 4.89 ERA. 5 runs every single game. You're going to go out there and pitch. And we looked at them 3 years ago when the Chris Sale trade actually happened for Yoan Moncada. They were looked at as the Golden State Warriors of starting pitching for the MLB. They were looked at as every team was so afraid to go against this starting pitching because they had Rick Porcello, who was coming out of the Cy Young Award winner. David Price was going to have a bounce back season. Chris Sale was in his prime at the time and wasn't dealing with injuries. But, you know, it always seems like the Red Sox have to get those big contracts, and then, you know, once they get those big contracts, the injuries start happening, the players start getting crazy inconsistent, and so this is a huge issue for the Red Sox, and especially with all the other holes that they have to figure out how to fix. This is going to be so difficult because they're trying to lower their payroll under the 208 threshold. And the reason for this is because the last 2 years they've been really bad offenders of being over this threshold. This luxury tax threshold is kind of like a salary tax in the NFL, in the NHL, or the NBA. You know, you can't get over that, or for like the MLB, they get taxed heavily for this. So if you have a payroll over that line, then you get a 50% tax for every dollar that is spent over that 208 threshold. So this really didn't help the Red Sox this past year because they had to pay $13.5 million for that threshold, which doesn't help their payroll whatsoever. And also, it really docked them in the MLB draft this last season. They got a 10-slot drop because of this overage in the 208 threshold. That's crazy. They already won the World Series, so they were already the last team in the draft. So then they got bumped down 10 more. Like, that's our future. We already have the 30th worst farm system in the MLB. We need those players to help us develop our future in our farm system. Now, starting pitching isn't the only thing that the Red Sox are spending a lot on. They're also spending a lot on different position players. But these position players are actually giving a lot of value to the team and are really helping out and are really making the offense very dangerous, and pitchers really don't really want to go against them. So that starts at the top with Mookie Betts with $27 million, and that's just a projection for what he's going to get with his arbitration hearing. And then it gets number 2 with JD Martinez making $23 million, and then Xander Bogaerts making $20 million, and then remember the name Rusney Castillo. He was signed in 2014 from Cuba. He was looked at as one of these big stars like Jose Abreu, as Yomani Tomas, who was looked at as this crazy good Cuban baseball player. But these players never really seemed to pan out like Jose Abreu was able to. The Red Sox signed Rusney Castillo to this huge deal in 2014, And then he only ended up playing 99 games in the MLB. And for the last 3 years, he's been in AAA, just being mediocre. But we're still paying him $14 million. Now that $14 million is, we can use that for anybody else. We could use that for a first baseman. We could use that for a new starting pitcher. We could use that towards the relief. And we really needed that last year. And so it really stings with these big contracts that are really weighing down on this payroll and are really limiting what the Red Sox are able to do in the last 2 years, and it's going to be hard for them to do really anything this next offseason. And so this is one of the biggest reasons why they fired Dave Dombrowski, who had that sort of old mentality of running a franchise with absolutely gutting the farm system and just having a win now mentality. You see it right now with the Detroit Tigers. They had the worst record in the MLB. Why is that? Because 5 years ago, Dave Dombrowski decided to uproot the entire farm system, and he did make them into a really, really dangerous and good team. You saw it with Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, and Miguel Cabrera, Prince Fielder, all those guys at the top, but those guys were making a lot of money. And then he also decided to absolutely destroy their farm system and give them no future for the next 5 to 6 years. And then you see how they've been doing since he left to go to the Red Sox. They haven't really been able to do anything. And Dave Dombrowski decided to do the same exact thing he did to Detroit Tigers, and now you're seeing it with the Red Sox. Now the Red Sox are in a position where they don't really have any future at the moment. They need to do their best to really trade these awful contracts and be able to get that money back with cheap options, but still be able to find a way to get those prospects to build up their farm system so then they're actually able to have a future. So one of the biggest ways that I believe that they'd be able to free up a lot of payroll is that they trade Jackie Bradley Jr. or a guy like Sandy Leon. Now, Sandy Leon is projected to make about $2.8 million, and for a guy that's a backup catcher, who I understand, he has a really good relationship with the pitchers, and the pitchers really do trust him, and seems to pitch a lot better with him, just because of the relationship they have, other than with Christian Vasquez. But when you have a guy who has zero offensive value, and anytime he gets up to the plate, you're like, shoot, is he gonna ground out? Is he gonna strike out? Can he do anything? Then I don't believe that is valued at $3 million. And for a guy in Jackie Bradley Jr., who I understand is the best defensive outfielder in the MLB, in my opinion, but he can't hit. And I've been hearing it for the last 4 years. Oh, he's gonna figure it out. He's been going on to AAA. He's been changing his stance. He's been doing stuff in the offseason. I just haven't seen it. If you're not able to hit over 220 in the last 4 years, I'm not gonna believe that you're a great hitter. So I believe that there's a lot of really good cheap options that they'd be able to go to in the free agency market and be able to trade Jackie Bradley Jr. or Sandy Leon for either a starting pitcher, a first baseman, prospects, relief, anything, any way that the Red Sox are able to get some really good valued prospects or even good valued players that are able to fill these holes, they should take those opportunities. I believe some great options that they'd be able to get for Sandy Leon, for backup catchers like Yan Gomes or Brian Holiday, who we had a few years ago. Those guys who are able to have good relationships with their pitchers and still be able to be productive on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. And then if you look at some good replacements for Jackie Bradley, I think like Leonis Martin or Cole Calhoun would be great people that have that still good defensive versatility and are able to still get on base and hit the ball really well. Like a guy like Cole Calhoun, I think is going to have a real good bounce back season, and he'd be able to be a really good option in the outfield for the Red Sox, not only for his defensive ability, but also I believe he's going to have a really good bounce back season offensively, and I think he'd be able to hit really well in Fenway Park. Another position that I believe the Red Sox really need to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to fill this hole is first base. Now with Pierce and Moreland both gone, they need to really figure out how they're going to be able to get that power bat in that lineup to be able to really build that offense and be able to get those runs in. And it's really good that we have like Chavez to be able to fill the second base position and also be able to potentially fill that first base position. It's great that we have that versatility on our team, also especially now that Brock Hoda is going to be a free agent. But we need to really figure out, a cheap option that would be able to really be able to put a spark to that offense whenever we really needed it. And I believe that either Justin Smoke or Eric Thames would be great options. And a really good option that's kind of out of left field is Avisail Garcia. He was a right fielder for the Tampa Bay Rays, and then he also used to play for the White Sox. Now, I believe that he is a great build for first base, and he doesn't really seem to be or as defensively efficient in right field, even though he's been a career right fielder. So I think it'd be really interesting if they were able to move him to first base with that big body and still be able to have that cheap, productive option in the offensive side. And also he'd be able to play DH when JD wanted to slot to right field, because we really never know like what's going to happen if they do trade Mookie, which, by the way, I'm going to be making a video about in the next week or so. So I think a really good way also to be able to free up that payroll would be able to either trade David Price or Nathan Eovaldi for pitcher needy teams, such as the Texas Rangers, such as the Cincinnati Reds, such as the Minnesota Twins. All these teams have money that they're able to take on these big contracts and be able to, you know, take a gamble on these players. And potentially with this new scenery and with this new coaching staff, I believe that these pitchers may be able to flourish in these different cities, and we're able to get good prospects for them in return, and also be able to not have to have that burden of those really hefty contracts on our payroll, and we're able to free that up to be able to get better players for our future. I believe it would also be a really good idea for us to be able to get some good bullpen help, because I think that there's a lot of really good bullpen guys that are up for free agency, such as Daniel Hudson, such as Sergio Romo, and other guys like David Phelps, Colin McHugh. I really think that David Phelps or Colin McHugh would be really good guys to be able to slot into that fifth starter position, because you know they did used to be starters, but if you did have an issue where a guy got injured, where we saw it a lot last year, or you need to just throw him in there for some 3-inning, 4-inning makeup innings that aren't being well used, I think that those guys would be very viable for the Red Sox and very valuable to be able to have that versatility with the team when, you know, they're in this bridge year. So, you know, it'll be really interesting to see how this offseason all pans out, with if the Red Sox are going to trade Mookie Betts, or if they're going to trade David Price, or how they're really going to be able to dwindle up this payroll, and also be able to find a way to get prospects and cheap young guys to be able to start building for this future. And I believe that with the Red Sox new hiring of Chaim Bloom, he's the perfect guy to be able to find these guys. With his work that he did at the Tampa Bay Rays, he was able to really make a very good and productive team with such a small payroll, and also be able to build up that farm system to number 3 in the MLB. And as you saw with the last few years in Tampa, they've been able to produce a lot of really good homegrown pitching prospects, like you saw it with Chris Archer, James Shields, Jeremy Hellickson, David Price, Jake Odorizzi, you know, Matt Garza, the list goes on. So if Chaim Bloom is able to find those guys to be able to develop in the Red Sox farm system and be homegrown pitching prospects, you know, like we had with John Lester, and like that's really all I can really think of, because for the Red Sox homegrown pitching prospects, because it doesn't seem like that they've been really able to produce or find those good pitching prospects that have been able to be productive for the team. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen, and how the Red Sox are really going to be able to pull all this off and still be able to contend in 2020. Put it all in the comment section below. Let me know if you want me to make more of these videos, and give me a thumbs up if you did like this video. I had a lot of fun making it and also researching all the different numbers, because it is going to be interesting to see how they're going to be able to figure this out. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys subscribe for more weekly videos. You guys have a great rest of your day. See ya.
Hold up, wait until the whole team show up, yeah. I'm in Neverland, can't grow up.